G'day and welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I want to do a video regarding a question I get asked quite often, which is I want to get into long range shooting, or I want to get into precision shooting, and what's the best rifle for me? What's the best caliber? And all sorts of things along those lines. What I want to discuss today is what I think of, and I'll qualify I think as I'm not a professional. I do quite a bit of this stuff. I don't compete in competitions, but I do a lot of pushing the boundaries. I've done a lot of learning, and I've done a bit of teaching, and I've got some opinions about the subject. So that's what I'm putting forward, my opinions. And what I would talk about is a generalisation of rifles. I don't really believe that brands or even to degree styles or stocks or things like that have a lot to do with the conversation. They are nuances and bits and pieces down the track, but irrelevant to start with, but about caliber. And I would also qualify very quickly into the fact that a couple of things: if you're starting out with rifles, like you're starting out with any sort of firearm, then a very simple answer as to what's the best thing to start with, and that's a 22 long rifle. That's about the best place to start, to learn the basics of it with cheap ammo, to learn your forms and bits and pieces. There's a lot more to learn afterwards, but there's still the stuff to learn there. It's nice, it's fun, it gets the process started, it's a cheap way to do it, and really it's a good thing to have in the cupboard. So it's a good place to start with any form of shooting. But when you go into long range, when you go into precision shooting, then there's a lot of arguments about what's the best one for the job. And that's got its own question marks. That's got its own lots of different choices, and there's lots of things involved with it. You can do the comparison with something like tried and proven 308 for long range shooting, Palmer, all sorts of competitions that the 308 was great for, is great for, and compare it with something like the 6.5 Creedmoor, something that's very commonly been spoken about. And there's some obvious differences. The 6.5 Creedmoor is a similar recoiling rifle, a little bit less, with a little bit lighter bullet, more bullet speed, so it deals with the wind better, it has less bullet drop, so it's faster, everything makes it more accurate. And in a race between the two, who's going to compete the best, who's going to get the best score? Well, it's really probably the best shooter, but in the rifle's case, then there is the definite more likelihood of the faster, less affected by wind bullet, the 6.5 Creedmoor in that situation, that would win that argument. But there's a lot more to the argument in the initial question of what should I start with? What's the best caliber to start with? And my call on it, when you bring all that into what I think is right, then I think something like the 308 is one of the best calibers to do this job. Yes, the 308, the thing that everyone says is no good anymore, and you should have a 6.5 Creedmoor or a 6mm Creedmoor or a 243 or a 260 or all those better, faster bullets. The thing is, the question was, what should I start with? And what that to me means that you want to learn this skill. And you don't learn the skill best by jumping in the fastest or the best piece of equipment and then trying to perform as well as it. In my opinion, the way you learn is with something that's still functional, still going to do the job right, but it is going to teach you more. So the likes of the 308, in exactly that conversation, we'll go back to the 308 and the 6.5 Creedmoor. The 308 gets affected more by wind. It also gets affected more by bullet drops, so you have to range better. Once you're getting out to the longer ranges, you have to do your ranging better because your bullet drop's going to be different. It gets affected by more things because simply the bullet's in the air for longer, so gravity's affecting it longer, it's getting pushed down more, the bullet's in the air for longer, wind's affecting it, so wind's going to push it more, which means that your skills have to raise to match that. So you then also have something that's easy to buy target ammo for, easy to buy normal ammo for, there's more of it. The other ones are catching up in places, but the 308 is always been around, there's a lot of it around the place. And because of basically because of the inefficiencies of that round, it's still great, don't get me wrong, it's not it's not wet behind the ears or terrible in a lot of fashions, but it's not got quite the performance of those other ones, but it is going to teach you more. You're going to get to learn wind better, you're going to get to learn how to dope things better because you have to do better to deal with it. And if you start in that place, then as you move up, you're going to, or move out, whichever that is, whether you're moving up in power or efficiencies of your bullet, of your load, in different calibers, or you're moving out in further distances, then that work you did, whether it was 300 yards or it was 600 yards or it was 800 yards or it was 1,000 yards, wherever it was, with the 308 you had to do more of it and you had to deal with it better. And yes, you have the wind pushing you more, where you'll find bigger groups. You'll find bigger groups that are moving you around more. But the more you learn to read those differences by what your 308 round has to deal with, the faster you're going to learn. You're just getting more information a lot faster, and you're going to learn faster from it. And that comes back to even the 22 long rifle. You'll find that shooting that even at 25 yards gets affected by wind more, where a high power basically, or a centerfire largely, won't be affected by wind. You go out to the 50 yards, you go out to the 75 yards, you go out to the 100 yards or the 200 yards or the 300 yards, more and more affected by it, because it's a slow moving bullet. And all those things start to come into line. The slower the bullet, the slower it comes out of the muzzle, the more your follow through on your trigger affect what, or your follow through with your whole shot affect how it shoots. So the more you've got to train yourself to shoot well. So there's lots of other choices in there. Obviously, I don't want to single out a 6.5 Creedmoor versus a 308 in the conversation. It's more to say that something like the 308, and really the 308 is a really good place to start. Has enough recoil to make it a rifle that you have to do the right things. Has an efficient enough bullet where it's still capable out to 1,500 yards without any problems in the way of target shooting. But it's one of the ones you're going to have to work harder with. I'd also say, for the people who go down the road of talking about going to a Magnum caliber, going to a 7mm Rem mag, or going to a 300 Win mag, all those things, same sort of conversation. They have more recoil you're dealing with, which is another negative attached to it, which in truth a 308 will have taught you a little bit more about that stuff than the likes of a 260 or a 223 or a 243 or that sort of stuff. It will have taught you a little bit more, but the main thing I'm talking about is that bullet speed, and it's a really good place to start from. And like I said, lots of good target ammo out there for it as well, where you can actually take it a long way. Now, I'd like to stress that conversation. Two things I'd like to point out. One, I'm not saying that the 308 is the best round for everyone to do long range shooting with. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying good place to start. Probably what I consider one of the best places to start, depending on the shooter. And I suppose I would qualify that by saying the likes of a 223 in the right twist rifle is also very good for a smaller person, for a kid, for a smaller framed person, a small female or small male for that matter, they're very recoil sensitive. Then the likes of the 223 does a good job as well. It also, you run one in a 1 and 8 twist, where you can run the 75 or 80 grain bullets through them. Then you have very similar trajectory and wind effect and that sort of stuff as to your 308. It's a good place to learn. Not quite the recoil, so don't teach you as well for dealing with a recoil gun, but for someone who's never going to get to that place or really needs a lot more building up, another good place to start. So, good place to start, like I said. The other thing that I need to re-qualify and restate is that I'm not a professional, not a competitor. This is my experience, this is what I've seen, this is what I've learnt, and in both analysing the people that I've been with that have got better at shooting and help teach that side of things, and for myself, what I've learnt from, the more wind you deal with, the better shooter you are at dealing in even mild conditions. And to be honest, it's the same reason in my ELR shooting, which is another bracket, but in my ELR shooting, the windier conditions, which we have to deal with a lot of it nowadays, our new shooting position has some great scenery, some great ability to get to distances, but being undulating and having lots of different winds through there, it's hard work reading that wind and getting it right. But I become a better shooter for it. So that put me in mild conditions, it's a lot easier to deal with what's going on. Put in stable conditions, it becomes a lot easier. This is all out of actually having to shoot in the harder conditions. So I would always go with the little bit harder road that is going to teach you more, is a better place to start. So anyway, that's my take on it. In my opinion, the 308 is a very good one to start with. Great one having in the cupboard. Certainly not a dead colour by any means. We still shoot ours out to, it'll be going back out to the 2,000 yards, but we more consistently shoot it at the 1,000 to 1,500 yards. Still very effective, shoots really nicely. Like I said, a little bit more bullet drop, a little bit more wind. It's good stuff to put yourself through the paces. You jump back on your big one or your fast one, and you find your shooting is just sharper because you're dealing with something that just doesn't have quite the performance. Anyway, that's my take on it. I hope that helps some people that are asking those questions, and I hope that doesn't offend too many of the people that have decided it's dead. The 308 I think is still a really good choice. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Down below here we've got a link to our web store where we have some of the specialised long-range shooting products that we actually produce. Check them out.
And for those of you who can, it'd be great to get some help. In our store we have support bits, and when you purchase those, the money goes direct to our channel and helps us bring these videos to you.
Thanks, guys.
See you next time.